everyone. We are ready to go. We have quorum. I can confirm, and our YouTube link has started. So, Paul, whenever you're ready.
Hey, so good morning. Well, server, my name is Paul Bernards. I'm the chair of the Field Live Audit Committee. The clerk has confirmed that we have quorum, so I'll call the meeting 6 of TO Live Audit Committee to order. This meeting is being held using the city's WebEx technology with members of staff calling in or connecting by video conference or attending in person at Toronto City Hall. Because we are meeting remotely, we ask for your patience with any delays and technical issues. Members of the public can observe the meeting on YouTube. I would like to request that all staff keep their video turned off unless they need to speak or answer questions.
Sorry, Paul.
This will make it.
Can we just
Hello?
ask? Can we just ask that you speak a little closer to the mic? Some of us are having a difficult time hearing you.
Means you're going to get a bigger picture of me. Okay. I don't know what the hell I was. I would also like to request that all staff keep their video turned off unless they need to speak or answer questions. I'm getting an echo from somebody. This will make it easier for me as chair and for those watching on YouTube to observe members as they participate in the debate on each item and during votes. I also ask that all members and staff keep their microphones on mute unless you need to answer a question or speak. If any members do wish to speak on an item, I ask that you wait until staff have presented. I will then ask if any members wish to ask questions or of staff or to speak. If you do, please make sure your video is on and raise your hand or unmute your mic and indicate your intention to speak, and I will create a speakers list. When voting on a motion or an item, I ask that members make sure that your video is turned on and raise your hands to indicate your vote. Although we are at different locations meeting remotely today, the chair gratefully acknowledges that the land the TO Live Audit Committee is meeting on is traditional territory of the many nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat peoples, and is now home to many diverse nations, Inuit and Métis people. The chair also acknowledges that Toronto was covered by Treaty 13 with the Mississauga of the Credit. Are there any declarations of interest under the Municipal Conflict of Interest Act? If you do have an interest, please raise your hand or unmute your mic. TO. Can I have a motion to confirm the minutes of the TO Live Audit Committee meeting from Feb 11, 2020? Move. Great. All in favor, opposed, carried. We have 5 items on the agenda. We will consider a presentation from auditors from PricewaterhouseCoopers on RZ 6.3, then item RZ 6.5. Then I will move a motion to consider RZ 6.3 and remaining items in closed session, at which point the YouTube video feed will be turned off and any staff not required for the session will be temporarily removed from the call using WebEx lobby feature. After the closed session is complete, we will resume the in-public session to consider all these items publicly and finish the agenda. Our first item is RZ 6.3, 2019 audited financial results. We have Michael Houghton and Samir Patel from PricewaterhouseCoopers. I didn't see Samir. Where's Samir? I assume he's here. Okay. Our results for the year end. These results are also attached to an item as public attachment 1. Any questions on the presentation? We will hold down this item for further discussion in closed session. Okay. Next item is RZ 6.5, Toronto Life Foundation Drawbridge.
Sorry, Paul. Sorry to interrupt. You just you announced that they're actually going to do their presentation.
Reading the entire script.
Oh wait, are they doing the presentation now?
He's reading the entire script.
I thought that the presentation was in camera.
Well, you're hooked in twice, once through the committee room and once yourself. That's why we're getting an echo, I think.
I'm only hooked in once. It's when I'm speaking that I appear twice. I'm only logged in through my computer, Robert. So are they doing the presentation now or in camera? assume that was Julie I was talking to.
Hi, Robert. We're just give us one more second to figure out the audio here, and then we'll let the auditors do their presentation.
From my limited experience of only using WebEx 500 times a day, if there's multiple computers in the same room, all with their speakers on, you get the feedback. So only one computer can have a speaker on in a group session. Right, Gabe? Anybody got the music? Robert, your ceiling fan makes it look like you're going to get your head chopped off.
And the Wi-Fi is not so good either.
It's not, I don't have, yeah, no, it's terrible. I'm tethered to my phone, but I have, Rogers is sending a technician up on Saturday morning. So I'm going out, we're on an island. So I'm going to the boat, pick them up, bring them out. They've got some new technology for remote locations, and we qualify.
Don't let him leave until it works. He's trapped on your island.
Yeah. Good advice. I'll take it.
So, Gary, are you social distancing from your razor?
I have been. You noticed?
Hi, members.
Couldn't miss it, Santa.
This It's Julie Amoroso. I'm just interrupting because we are still on YouTube. And to let you know, Paul, that you should be able to start again in 1 minute.
No more fun, guys. But hey, all the barbershops and things are opening up, right? I heard that.
Yeah, I just
this
got a
week.
notice. I just got a notice from my barber. He will not be seeing me though for some time.
I will be making. Just for lots of pressure.
And 30. I'm getting nervous, Mr. Chair. Got back-to-back stuff.
I already talked fast. I'll just talk fast.
Paul, if I can recommend to the chair that the two items for cybersecurity report, which is the first item and the the first quarter results for 2020 can be very short items if the chair is okay with that.
Yeah.
Hello again, everyone. So we're back. Worked out some of our audio issues. So Paul, if you want to continue where we were, I believe it was around audit.
Right. Okay. So just for future reference in the script, since using these remote meetings, it's easier if you start staging notes like read report now. So I'm going to do that. So we're going to the auditor's report, and I assume I'm to ask you to present it. So Michael.
Great. Thank you, Paul. Good morning, everyone. I'll assume the report's been pre-read, and I'll touch upon the highlights, and I would ask the committee and anybody else that should you have any comments or questions along the way, please feel free to stop me, and both Samir and I, who's joined me on the call today, will do our best to respond. If you're following along our report, in terms of status of the audit in section 1, we are substantially complete the audit for the 2019 financial statements. There are 4 items that we've listed here as open and outstanding. Item number 2, the legal letters we have now received back in full, so no issues to report there. The other 3 items that you see there are, I'll say, routine open items that we would leave open until the scheduled approval of the financial statements by the board. So I would consider those procedural in nature. I can make a few overall comments that we received full cooperation from the TO Live management team throughout the audit. We had no significant disagreements. We completed the audit largely in course with our timelines. We completed the procedures as we had planned. And I would report to the committee that we completed the audit this year with the restrictions of COVID remotely. So the entire year-end field work was completed remotely, leveraging technology and working closely with management to share schedules, things of that nature, all done electronically. Section 2 of our report itemizes significant accounting auditing matters. There's 5 items there that we've commented on. The first 2 areas are mandatory significant risk areas for all audits. The TO Live financial statements are no different. That being risks associated with fraud and revenue recognition, that as an auditor, we're required to design procedures and execute on those to address or mitigate the risk. And then secondly, risks associated with management override of controls. Again, as an auditor, we're required to design procedures to address and mitigate those risks. I can confirm to the committee that we have executed the procedures in both of those areas as we had planned. That included sample testing of revenue transactions during the year. That also included looking at journal entries following a risk-based approach. We completed those procedures and have no matters or significant findings to bring to your attention. Turning over to other key matters for discussion, if you're following, it's page 8 of our PDF. There are 3 other items to bring to the committee's attention. Firstly, with respect to intercompany payables with the City of Toronto. As you recall, for those committee members that were there this time last year, we had a discussion around an intercompany payable that was recorded in the accounts of TO Live owing to the City of Toronto. There were deliberations and negotiations around that payable as it relates to what's outstanding, and it was ultimately determined that the payable was not supportable. It went through the City of Toronto's write-off process and the bylaws for intercompany payables and receivables. That write-off was approved by City of Toronto Council in December 2019. Accordingly, you'll see in the December 31, 2019 financial statements that payable has been removed. And there's been no disclosure in the financial statements reflecting that payable or the removal of that payable. We have reviewed the accounting treatment, we have reviewed the disclosures, and we are satisfied with the disclosures and the accounting conclusions reached in that area. The second of 2 items on this page to comment on page 8 is the Toronto Live Foundation. So as you may or may not be aware, there was a new Toronto Live Foundation that was created in the fall, November of 2018. There were no transactions in 2018, but there were amounts that were transferred from TO Live to the foundation in 2019. That was in the amount of $2.3 million. That amount has been reflected as an outflow in the TO Live financial statements. And you will notice in the financial statements, there's additional disclosures as required under public sector accounting standards for the relationship between TO Live and the Toronto Live Foundation, as well as some disclosures with respect to the Toronto Live Foundation itself. We have reviewed those disclosures and are comfortable with how they're presented in the financials at the end of the year. The third of 3 items to bring to the committee's attention is on page 9 of our report, titled Legal Claim. Again, this would be a follow-on or an update to what we discussed with this committee previously. There was a claim that was served to both the City of Toronto and the Legacy Board of Directors of the Sony Centre in a prior year. Relates to the redevelopment of now what's called the Meridian Hall. That claim is in the amount of $9.7 million. There is disclosure of the claim in the financials. It is being rigorously defended by City of Toronto legal counsel. The view taken both internally as well by external counsel is that it's early stages, no amounts, too early to determine if any amount is owing. And so no liability has been reflected in the financial statements, and that's been disclosed as such in the financials. Based on the legal letters that we received, the discussions we had with legal, we are comfortable with the accounting conclusion and the disclosures that they meet the disclosure requirements under public sector accounting standards. Moving on in our report, section 3 of our report is a summary of audit findings, any adjusted or unadjusted items, nothing that we're aware of. So there's nothing that was adjusted in the financials. So the draft version that the committee sees in front of them is the same draft financial numbers that management provided to us at the start of the audit. And there's nothing that we're aware unadjusted as a result of completing the audit procedures. Section 4, titled Required Communication, these would be, or what I would characterize as standard communications between auditor and audit committees. Just a few items to highlight here to the committee. We have included a draft of our report, which would be an unqualified opinion, quote unquote, clean opinion in Appendix 1. We provided a copy of our representation letter that we would get management to sign on the same date the board is scheduled to approve the financials. Those would be standard representations. That's there for the committee's viewing in Appendix 2. We're not aware of anything in terms of significant internal control deficiencies, nothing to report based on the test work that we did as part of the 2019 audit. And the topic of fraud and illegal acts, we are required to have an annual communication at minimum with the committee. Nothing has come to our attention based on our inquiries with management, based on the work that we completed with respect to known, alleged, or suspected frauds. Mr. Chair, if I could quickly pause and ask yourself and each of the members of the committee if you're aware of anything to bring to Samir and I's attention.
Nope.
Nope.
Thank you for that. The subsequent events, we're not aware of any subsequent events that is in addition to what is disclosed in the financial statements. You will notice that in the financial statements, there is additional wording dealing with the subsequent event with COVID-19 and the pandemic and the impacts to TO Live. That's been reflected as a subsequent event as a last note in the financial statements. I would pause, Mr. Chair, and this is the second of 2 questions I ask, and ask yourself as well as members of the committee if you're aware of any subsequent events in addition to that was disclosed that you need to be made aware of, Samir and I.
Nope.
Thank you. That concludes the highlights of the audit and the key items I wanted to bring to your attention, the committee's attention. I'll pause and happy to take any comments or questions that the committee may have.
I'll start. That COVID-19 note's rather lengthy. It almost reads like a going concern note. Is that a standard wording for all your audit clients, or is it custom tailored to us?
I would say it is tailored. The note is not meant to be generic, although I would say, you know, when you look at the wording, the first paragraph is generic. That can certainly be shortened if that would be the committee's preference. But the second paragraph, you're really trying to hone in on what are the implications to the particular entity. So happy to take any comments you may have. I think it's, you know, the viewpoint that we discussed with management in detail was around the restrictions, the impacts to the facilities, and what does that mean as it relates to the 2020 year. And so that wording, we worked with management to best reflect that in the financial statements.
I have no issue with how it's worded. Any other questions from the committee at this time? All right. All right, so thank you for your report. We'll hold this item for further discussion in a closed session. Next item is RZ 6.5, TO Live Foundation draw request. This is a report and supplementary report from the President and CEO of Chief Executive Officer TO Live. Clyde, will you discuss this, then we'll ask for questions.
Yes, thank you to the chair. I'll be as brief as possible. There are 2 parts to this report. The first is a request for a draw for $1 million from the foundation, if needed, for operating for the next 6 months. This is a contingency operational amount, which would give us the ability, as the board is aware, in the emergency plan that we gave to the board at the last board meeting, which was passed and which has subsequently been put into place. There are two sources of funding we have currently for the operating of the company to get us through until we begin opening up again. That is the city subsidy, the base city subsidy, which is given to us, and then the Meridian Credit Union naming rights. We wanted to provide, in case either of these should not come through at any point, we wanted to make sure that there was an alternative draw that would allow us to meet our obligations, at least in the short run. Thus, we're asking for up to $1 million in order to do that. That's the first part of the request. The second part of the request is contingent on not needing the first part of the request. So if we do not need any draw for operating and the other two sources of income continue, then we would like to request to the audit and to the board for a request to draw for the foundation for the real purpose of the foundation, which is for programming. This would be to help underwrite the cost for the program for recovery, which you have before you. This is the provision of space program. This is from a detailed report that Josephine Ridge has done. You'll have a very long PowerPoint that you can review. Hopefully you've seen already. This is direct from dialogue with the community, that the artists which have been in their homes like the rest of us for a long period of time, and before they're able to perform and open to audiences, would provide opportunity for them for creation. And thus we were asking for an underwriting of that for $250,000 from the foundation, which we believe as staff is a very good use of this. Thank you.
All right, as I believe you will be discussing the $250,000 in more detail later in this meeting. I guess the vote's not now on this. Why is there two separate requests? The $1 million and then the $1 million plus the $250. Doesn't the June 17th request simply replace the June 9th memo? There's two memos both talking about $1 million.
Sorry,
yeah, there's a memo dated June 17th, which talks about the $1 million and the $250. And then right after that, there's a memo dated June 9th that only talks about the $1 million. So should the second memo have been removed?
So, Clyde, I can jump in if you'd like.
Oh, please do. Yeah.
Except that it seems my audio might be a bit echoey. So basically, there was a report submitted on June 9th, and then a supplementary report submitted on the 17th. And you're right, one of the motions is a duplicate, but you will have the opportunity to move a motion in this meeting to replace the original recommendation. I'll also note there's no confidential attachment here, so currently this item would not be discussed in closed session as it's all public information. So this would be the time to move the recommendations, unless there's a component that needs to be discussed in closed session.
Well, there is a report on opening up the theater. Is that public or private?
It's public.
Okay.
So I'm happy to give more detail on for what the 250 covers if you would like verbally, Paul.
No, I think that's covered fairly well in the materials.
Yep.
And the public report is pretty clear. The PowerPoint is pretty clear. The only question I had on the PowerPoint, the detailed one, was it has a budget of $3 million, and this is 250. Where's the rest of the money come from?
We are applying for different areas of funding for that, including at the city through the Office of Toronto Office of Recovery.
And is getting that funding contingent, is needing this 250 contingent on getting that funding?
No, it's not. Getting the 250 actually gets us started, which is why we're requesting it. We'd like to begin, and it covers almost 12 weeks of work in our spaces for artists. So we would very much like to begin that process.
And then I guess my last question is, the report says there's no financial impact, but there is a financial impact because you're asking for money, or unless I don't understand the financial impact section of the memo.
Well, I don't want to be the one that defines the financial impact memo of a city document, but yeah, so your confusion might be my confusion, but yes, I would, that probably was an error.
Yeah. So, all right, that's fine. We understand the concept. Now, this is also being brought up at the board of directors meeting.
It will be passed along to the board for a vote, yes.
Okay, so then if I could suggest, is there any other questions from the rest of the committee? Everyone understands that the million is a placeholder in case there's other shortfalls. Okay,
I did have a question, Mr. Chair.
Okay, go ahead, Gary.
Can you just sort of outline the discussions with finance staff on this? That number one, is the city even you may have to dip into this, but is the city guaranteeing that those funds if you have to dip into that? My concern, of course, is where like sort of using funds from the foundation for operating, and that wasn't the intent of the foundation. That's not the intent of this money. So I want to make sure that the city is, number one, agreeable, but are they guaranteeing this in the event that you have to use that money?
No, the city is not guaranteeing it because it is a draw, not a loan. And the reason we are putting it forward is because as the councillor is aware, the process with the city currently is a bi-weekly report to the city, and we want to be honest, we want to make sure that we don't run, if the city were at any time not to pay the base subsidy, then we would need to look to other areas for income. Otherwise, we would quickly run into a wall with expenses.
So if they do continue paying the subsidy to the organization, you wouldn't have to dip into this? Is that pretty much what you're telling me?
Barring any other source of income not coming in, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chair, I've got a quick question as well.
Is that Gabe?
Okay.
Oh,
Yeah, hey. Sorry, guys, the internet's a little bit off. So, yeah, we've had so many discussions around using foundation money, and what we can use it for, and I'm wondering, obviously these are, unprecedented times. We have to survive. Need cash that isn't tied up in ticket sales. Why don't we do a loan, for example, that would show future potential sponsors or donors that yes, we withdrew from the foundation in a time of crisis, but we paid it back. Obviously we control I think right now the board of the foundation, so we can put the interest rate zero or very low. I mean, what's the purpose of not doing a loan and just a straight withdrawal? And I understand for the 250 that's programming, but for the million, wouldn't it be better to pay them back if possible?
To the chair, if I may answer to the committee, a reminder that at the very beginning of the crisis, we attempted to take a loan from the foundation, and the City of Toronto does not allow the agencies to accept loans from outside organizations. That would include foundations related to the agency.
That's right. We can't even get a proper credit card program because of that restriction. So, all right. I just have one last question on the 250. Worst case scenario, none of the other funding comes through. The whole $3 million or $4 million you're hoping to get support on, no one comes to the table. unlikely scenario, but let's say it happens. Is the 250 still necessary? Can you still benefit from that spend?
Absolutely. The 250 does something that's, we think the 250 is the critical cornerstone of the entire program. That accessing this space and allowing artists to come in as soon as they are able to be able to use this space for creation will have benefits far into the future that we cannot even imagine at this stage, because we would actually be helping directly the people that we're supposed to be servicing in the community.
Okay, then if we may, during the board meeting, when we get to this section, you could walk through all the grant money you're looking for and what benefits it brings. That would just be educational more than anything else. But let's defer that to that meeting. So can I have wait, I'll go back to the script here. All right. I would ask the clerk to display a motion with the recommendations from the supper report on this item, which I'll read out loud as well.
Yep, give us 1 second. We'll get that motion up for you.
Okay, that the Board of Directors of TO Live direct the President and CEO TO Live to request the draw of up to $1 million for operating support from the Toronto Live Foundation Board to address any 2020 operating funding shortfall. 2, to direct President and CEO TO Live to request funds for up to $250,000 from the Toronto Live Foundation Board to support the first phase of TO Live's recovery program described in Attachment 1, Appendix B, pages 19 to 23. In the event that the recommendation 1 above will not be required. Direct the President and CEO TO Live to report back to board on the actions taken related to the recommendations above and the amount of funds requested from the Toronto Live Foundation. Have someone move that, please? Hey, Jillian. A second. Right, so Gary moves, so I'll say it was Gary. All in favor? Okay, motion is carried. I will now ask the clerk to display a motion to go into closed session, which I read out loud as well. Okay, that the TO Live Audit Committee recesses public session to meet in closed session to consider the following items. 6.1 cybersecurity second quarter update as it involves security of the property of the board. 6.2 2018 audited financial results. 6.3 2019 audited financial results. 6.4 2020 first quarter financial results and commentary as they contain financial information supplied in confidence to the TO Live Audit Committee, which, if disclosed, could reasonably be expected to prejudice significantly the competitive position of or interfere significantly with the contractual or other negotiations of a person, group, or persons or organization. All in favor? Okay. Motion. I will ask the clerk to close the meeting to members of the public in order to provide access to members and appropriate staff for the closed portion of this meeting. In addition, the live stream will be suspended until the closed session is over. Members and staff, I would remind you to arrange your surroundings so that no other person observes any part of the closed session debate.
I can confirm we're now in public session.
Okay, we're now back in open session and we'll consider publicly each of the items considered in closed session. 6.1 cybersecurity second quarter update. Are there any public questions for staff or speakers to this item? Okay, may I have a motion to move the staff recommendations? Okay, thank you, Gary. Jillian, all in favor? Okay, carried. 6.2 audited financial results report for 2018. Are there any public questions of staff or speakers to this item? Okay, we have a motion to move the staff recommendations. Okay, Jillian, thank you, Gary. All in favor? Okay, carried. 6.3 2019 audited financial results. Are there any public questions of the speakers to this item? Are there any public questions of staff to this item? We have a motion to move the staff recommendations. Hey, Gary, Jillian, thank you. All in favor? Carried. 6.4 2020 first quarter financial results and commentary. Are there any public questions of staff or speakers to this item? Can I have a motion to move the staff recommendations? Jillian, Gary, all in favor? All right, that concludes our business for today. The meeting is not adjourned because we're not meeting later. It's terminated. Bang. My gavel's in quarantine. All right, we'll see everyone in half an hour. Thank you.
See you guys. See you soon.